Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Elm with International Security Training, and this week we're going to be talking about protective intelligence. So I hope you got your notepads out and you're going to be able to take some notes. The first thing we want to do today is define protective intelligence and really compare it against the one item that it's most often compared to. We're also going to talk about the two I's of protective intelligence, and then we're going to look at the management aspect and what we're talking about there. So, what is protective intelligence? It's an official program made up of policies and SOPs. Okay, and a lot of guys look at protective intelligence the way we're teaching it here and the way I was trained in protective intelligence, and they think we're making it into a bigger deal than it has to be. A lot of guys just want to run with some checklists and kind of take it from that aspect. I really feel it should be an official program, especially if you're working for a corporate entity, because they work in the world of programs, policies, and SOPs. Okay, they understand security aspects, but what do they understand more? Occupational safety aspects and programs. So what we try to do is mirror our executive protection or our security format and structures into occupational safety. So whether you're in Canada, Australia, United States with OSHA programs, this is going to make a lot of sense for you guys, okay? Now, what do those policies and SOPs have to focus on? The three main things are the identification, assessment, and case management aspects. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about. Now let's look at each of those three things individually. Identification, we're going to be looking at what the threats are. Very basic, okay? That's going to be one of your SOPs or one of your main focuses. The other one, the assessment, is going to be looking at the person or group more in depth. After you identify them, now you got to kind of dig into their mindset, their environment, their resources, and see what's going on. And then finally, case management. You want to stay current on your identification, on the threats that you've identified. You want to stay current with the assessments because people might get better. They might relax. They might not be a threat anymore. On the flip side of that, they may get worse. Their anger and their resentment may become more intensified, and they may become more of a danger to your client or the company that you represent. So that brings us to the two I's. All right, identifying and investigating. All right, so how do we identify a bad guy? Okay, now I use the term bad guy, so just I apologize for that. Try to get used to it. A lot of people might talk about the threats or the subjects, no potential threats. I'm talking about the same thing, right? I just say bad guy. So the bad guy themselves, a lot of times you might have an overt threat. They have either already physically threatened, they may be verbally threatening, they may have already assaulted somebody that you represent. So a lot of times people are very loud and proud about their anger, and they're threatening people, and they don't want to hide. Okay, so that would be the easiest person to identify. A lot of times you will get information from secondhand people, concerned citizens, all right, staff that work with and around either your client or around the bad guy themselves, okay? So that's going to be another source. And thirdly is going to be from other agencies. So hopefully your company or your agency is talking with other agencies and you're building rapport with them and sharing information. This is probably the biggest challenge not only in government but also in the private sector. So again, you're going to identify bad guys, meaning that you're going to identify threats to your client or the company you represent by the bad guy themselves, secondhand people, or other agencies. Now, once you have done this, you've identified threats. Now you have to investigate because although you've identified the threat, you haven't really put a probability on it yet. You don't know how likely it is that they're going to attack or be a real harm. So you have to investigate, all right? Now you can use traditional investigation methods, all right? The who, what, where, when, why. You can do that and get your intel that way. And then never forget that you as a security personnel, if this fits within your scopes and your responsibilities granted to you by the employer, you can go meet and interview the bad guy. Now, this is not one of the, this is not the old days where we, you go out there and you threaten somebody and you have a come to Jesus meeting with them, okay? You're going out there as a PPS, a professional problem solver. Okay? You want to be proud, not arrogant. You want to be strong, but not rude. And you want to try to bring this person to a more level-headed situation. All right? You have to be professional. The people that get sent out on these tasks have to be the right person for that. We've done undercover uh, meetings with people where, and it's actually a trick I used to learn from doing bail enforcement work, where we would go out and basically trick people into coming on in. Okay, so you want to have that type of mindset. You don't want to have the bruiser mindset going on. You're going to interview people, try to calm them down, see what can be done to solve this problem. Look at one of my friends. He gets hired to go out and evict people. Okay, he is a professional problem solver because when he goes and he meets the resident who's staying in the house illegally by the time he's called, um, let's say he gives them $500 to move out within 24 hours, and they do it. Okay, he didn't have to get physical. He didn't have to call the sheriff's department. He didn't increase his client's legal fees enormously by taking someone to court. Instead, he got it done within 24 hours for $500, and he communicated in a way that that person responded to. Okay, so you have to have the right communication skills to go out there and meet these bad guys. You don't want to escalate, and you don't want the bad guy to be going to the police department and to the courts and filing an order of protection on you saying that you threatened him or her. Okay, that would really screw things up for your business and your client. Okay. And finally, the management aspect, what we're talking about is case management. After you've done the other two things, you need to determine a probability. How likely is it that this person is going to attack? Listen, when you're doing threat assessments for your clients, a lot of people, I say amateurs, but I've seen people who've been doing this business for 20 years. They always have to have a stack of threats when they're done doing a threat assessment. They feel that they haven't done a correct threat assessment unless there's 20 different, bad guys, groups, um, improvements that need to be made to a building, and they deliver this to the client, and it's normally an enormous cost. Okay, you want to look at, yes, there are threats, but then there are probabilities. Be realistic, okay? Update the file as appropriate. What is a check-in date? By this, I mean set up, how often are you going to update your file or just maybe run some phone calls, following up with the bad guy. Is it going to be every 7 days for the first month, maybe the first 3 months? Is it going to be once a month? Create these little check-in dates and then set them up in your Outlook calendar or on your phone. Any way you create an alarm system and reminders, go ahead and create the reminders so that way you or your staff is following up on these files and making sure you have the most current information. You might get lucky and just have somebody who calms down or who has a change of heart. Then again, you might have someone who's ramped up their operations and is really moving forward with an attack on your client. So make sure you do that. Keep your files for several years and always share or consider sharing with, again, like we said before, other agencies, other security personnel, and companies. So in conclusion, what is the difference between a threat assessment and protective intelligence? I guess, for these short little video blogs, the way I broke it down in very simple is that a threat assessment is a form. It's something we complete, it's something we do every time we get a new client or every time a new threat is introduced to our environment. Protective intelligence involves the entire program. All right, this is what the director of security, the manager of security, is going to be working on and making sure that we're complying with all the legalities, whether it's legal requirements or insurance requirements. The threat assessment form is something that his staff will be using when they're out there on their day-to-day activities. So I hope this has been a help for you guys. My name is Brian Allen with International Security Training, and we look forward to working with you if you are not one of our students at this time. Thank you very much. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.